Hello, 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 New Haven. I am Lucy Gellman, and this is a special episode of Arts Respond, a collaboration between WNHH Community Radio and the Arts Council of Greater New Haven. You'll notice that today is not a Friday. Usually our show is on Fridays, but today is a beautiful sunny Wednesday. There's some bird song, and at least earlier there was a baby wailing uncontrollably outside. So you never know what's going to happen in this Zoom universe. My guest today is Kelly Wizzardo. Kelly is the Director of Education and Engagement at the Shubert Theater in downtown New Haven. And we will be talking about the Shubert Summer Camp and also a little bit about what education in the dramatic world and the dramatic arts has looked like this year. Kelly, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So the first thing I want to hop right into is the Shubert Summer Camp, which is coming back to in person this year after a year online.
You're coming back in person. So thrilled.
Yeah, so I would love to hear a little bit about it, and you know, for you to tell listeners who might be out there, especially ones who might have littles and not so littles at home, what's going on?
So we are back in person. Our camp happens at Co-op High School, which is one block down from the Shubert on College Street in New Haven. And it is going to be the first 2 weeks and the second 2 weeks of July. No camp on Monday the 5th because that's the holiday, so sparklers. But we're thrilled to be back in person. We're going to have, it's a little bit of a simplified version of our normal camp because we'll still have some COVID restrictions, COVID guidelines that we have to follow. So we'll still have a theater and arts camp, and every kid in that camp will take a theater class, a movement class, and a visual arts class. And then instead of our regular musical, we're going to have a musical review camp. So what we'll do is each week we'll take a big rousing number from one of the musicals we've done in the past 10 years. Can you believe it's been 10 years? And we will put that together in a COVID-friendly fashion. And at the end of each session of camp, we'll film everything because we're not quite ready to have an audience yet. So we'll film everything and share a link with all the families.
I want to ask a little bit about how this has changed, not only in the pandemic, but, you know, a decade is like your camp is almost a teenager, man.
So and yet I am the same age. I don't know how that happens.
That's right. That's what I've been telling I teach young people, and I'm twice their age now, and I feel like soon I'll be 4 times their age. But but tell me a little bit about how it has evolved, and specifically in the last year, what that has looked like, because I know that you have really had to pivot.
Yeah, I mean, camp itself has definitely evolved. The first couple of years, you know, we tried some different things, but, you know, kids related to most. The idea was always to have this camp for middle schoolers in co-op so that before they apply to co-op, because kids, you know, from all over the state can apply to go to this arts magnet school, it would give them a taste of what it's like to do art every day, right? And to come together in this group of kids that no matter what part of the state, no matter what school you went to, we were all there as artists. That's what we all had in common. So it has developed into this huge thing where we do, usually in 4 weeks, we're doing 4 different musicals because we had to we did one, the way to split that to the 2 ages so more kids could do it. You know, there's all these classes, we usually do showcases. So I'm kind of considering this year 9.5 because, you know, originally before COVID, I had these visions of having this huge celebration for year 10 and bringing back all our old campers and, you know, having a big party and a big performance, and we're still not quite there yet. So we're going to consider this 9.5, and hopefully next year we'll still be able to do that. But, you know, I'm at a point now where I've got campers, like original campers, who are now teaching for me as they go off to college. I have high school TAs who were in high school as teaching assistants who are now out of college and are teaching for me, as you know, in camp. So it's really exciting because it's kind of created its own little pipeline, you know, of kids who teach other kids and become teachers themselves and become, you know, professional artists, and it's amazing.
And what were you, I guess I'm interested in hearing a bit more about how COVID forced you to pivot last summer. And then also what you were hearing from some of the campers, and frankly, like some of the parents, because
Yeah.
they they both exist. And sometimes I imagine that campers do this as a little reprieve from their parents, and maybe vice versa.
Oh, absolutely. So when COVID happened and everything shut down, obviously we weren't able to do our regular camp in person, but we still wanted to have an option for kids because, you know, often they're the kids that are the arty kid in their school, but maybe they don't have a lot of those kids. And then they come to camp and they like find their tribe, they find their people. And they're like lifelong friendships and they look forward to seeing each other every year. And it's like, when you get to the oldest age and they kind of graduate out, it's a big deal. So we wanted to make sure we still offered a virtual option where kids could still gather, we could create art together, we could see our friends and have a good time. And it was a little smaller, but we had a great time. And we actually wound up adding a younger age to virtual camp. So usually we were rising 5th through 8th graders, and we added rising 3rd and 4th graders and did like another class. And those kids were so awesome and so engaged that we wound up adding them to in-person camp. So in that sense, we're actually expanding to a little bit younger. So younger brothers and sisters who got in a little earlier, thrilled that they can be there. And the parents, it was hard in winter because, everybody's a little zoomed out. We don't want to do Zoom. But it was wintertime. We were stuck inside. We could get together and create. We could move around a little bit together. And, I had a lot of parents say, thank you. My kid was really struggling with virtual learning. They were not engaged. They were not into it. I couldn't really get them motivated to do anything. But then camp happened and that motivated them. Like they wanted to go to camp every day and they wanted day, and they got that spark back, that a lot of kids were missing. So that was, if that happened to one kid, it was all worth it, right?
Yeah.
And now that summertime, everybody's like ready to get out of the house, ready to see their friends. I'm sure mom and dad are ready for a break.
Yeah.
So I think summer camps all around are going to be packed because everybody's ready to get out there and do fun things together again.
And what is that going to look like? So I feel like we are in this weird space right now where there's the little light and you can see it twinkling at the end of the tunnel. And then also the pandemic is not over. And we're in this moment of, I think, optimism and also great grief, right? Like more Americans have died in the past probably 15 and a half months than in any recent global conflict or war that American forces have been directly involved in. And that's really sobering. And so I'm wondering, what camp looks like with COVID precautions in place.
Well, we're in Co-op High School. So Co-op is already back. So as part of my job here at the Shubert, we also work with Co-op and we manage their spaces. So I've been over there since the kids have been back. Because kids, if a teacher's not in, they come to the main stage and they work there. So I've gotten to know like 95% of everybody's names, which is a challenge for me, very name challenge. And I can't see their whole faces. So I'm like, so it's been an experience, but it's great. So, Co-op's ready. We've got all the MERV 13 filters and we've got all the sign, we've been functioning perfectly well. And that's comforting because that's already established. And a lot of kids have already been back to school and, the kids understand the routine. Like they wear their masks and they do the sanitizer and they're fine. They understand how to do it. So that's comforting because we're just going to go back into that space. Some rules are still kind of relaxing, but obviously with kids, we're going to stay with masks on indoors. And some of our kids are under 12, so they wouldn't even necessarily have had the opportunity to get vaccinated. So we're just going to treat everybody the same and we're all going to wear a mask together and we're used to it and it's going to be cool. And actually I've ordered some blank masks and fabric markers because we're gonna work it into our costumes. We're creative people, we're gonna be creative. So we're gonna decorate those masks and make them part of our costume. So that'll be amazing. But like you said, like we have all been part of this collective trauma. Whether you personally knew somebody died or you just lost this activity or, seniors who lost prom and graduation, like we all feel it at very different levels, but we all have this trauma that we've lived through in this past year. And honestly, one of the best ways to work through any trauma is with art. So for some kids, it might be creating a painting that is about their feelings about COVID, or it could be, writing a play or doing a movement piece, or, just finding joy in singing and dancing again. It's a really, really constructive and healthy way to move through any of your emotions. So I'm kind of looking forward to being a healing kind of event for all of us, including the adults. Like we're so thrilled we're going to get to see these kids again, because it was so hard when you were virtual and not everybody has their cameras on and you can't like, are you okay? Where are you? Just to see everybody again and to interact will just be so healing for everybody.
Yeah. And can I get a little sneak peek of some of the programming? Because I also want to talk to you about how I feel like theater and musical theater, not only because of COVID, but because of the twin pandemic that we've been living through, which is white supremacy, police brutality, and anti-Black violence. Theater has had a real reckoning in the past year, and I think that has touched every piece of theater. There are now movements that are fairly entrenched, like We See White American Theater. And those, I know high school kids who are following that on Instagram and who are engaging in the dialogue. And so I'm wondering, has that touched programming as you're thinking of how you want to be an artistic and cultural support system to these kids?
Yeah, I mean, with the high school kids, absolutely. For summer camp, we're younger, so it's the rising third through middle, so it's a little bit younger. So we deal a little bit less directly with them, although, like I said, everybody processes everything on their own. And the great thing about camp is, like our visual art teacher, Judy Kavanaugh, who's fantastic and is a professional, certified teacher in New Haven. She'll have a project that everybody works on, but then she also has space for kids to evolve it in a way that speaks to them and is relevant to them, whether it's the medium or the format or maybe the concept, what they're talking about. We have never shied away in camp from, when topics come up like this. It's a great way to express it through art. And if it expresses it through art, great. We don't want to ruin that. With our musicals, because again, we're dealing with younger kids, we do a lot of Disney and fairy tales and that kind of thing. We're not doing like the high school kids are going to tackle some much meatier, topics.
Although I
we
will
also
say
can be completely, when we cast, where I don't want to say colorblind because that's the wrong word. No, none of us are colorblind. We shouldn't be colorblind, but we have the freedom to cast whoever, right? So your family, our family in our show can look like many families in the real world, mixed genders and mixed race and, different gender identities. And all of that is great in theater. We can do all of that, so that everyone finds a place and every kid can see someone who looks like them.
And I will say in Disney and in musicals that are coming out now, I don't think Moana is Disney. I think maybe it's Pixar, but there is a Moana.
Yeah, Moana's Disney,
yeah, and Moana Junior, man, that Moana has taught me a lot of life lessons. And I think I think also a lot of people probably their first the way they first learned about adult things, like the things adults do when they love each other or when they like each other, and about sex and romance was from Disney movies, because jokes are built into those movies that so I don't think that
kids, usually there's a lot of space in our camp for kids to write plays. We used to do a film class, which we're not doing this sharing of the equipment. But middle schoolers, there's a lot of common theme in middle school writing. There's a lot of zombies. There's a lot of slowly falling down stairs, getting locked in the school, but that can get deep. Some of their movies can get deep. And again, they're processing everything on their level, how they see it. And fairy tales and all those, any storytelling is how we process things and how we explain stuff to each other. People in ancient history saw the moon and maybe they didn't understand what the moon was, but they told the story of what the moon and how it related, right? So storytelling is part of our human identity, and that will always continue. Theater continues on, even though this past year has been really rough for our industry. Trust me, really rough. But I mean, you saw all the virtual art that was created. You know, the art
Yeah.
didn't stop. Even if the building was closed, the art never stopped because we will always need it and we will always appreciate it. And it makes us feel better. You know, even when it's challenging at the end, hopefully we feel better because we've been challenged and we thought about something, you know.
Yeah, I think that's true. And that actually leads into my next question. So I have heard these two sides, and one side is like categorically right and one side is wrong. I truly believe that. But one has said and is still saying, after this year that we've been through, the arts are expendable or the arts are a luxury. And then another side is saying, how could you have gotten through this year without Netflix, without CDs, or I guess people listen to Spotify now. No one listens to CDs. And without films, without your little doodle pad. And so I'm wondering from you, as someone who has like been in the trenches with kids, how have you seen the way, because I have seen theater as a life-saving mechanism, especially for young people. And so what have you seen, among these young kids, among these young people?
Well, I mean, again, I'll just reference co-op because it's, my part of my daily life, but we just last week, Friday, Saturday, we just premiered our online musical. So because we couldn't do a real life one, we did Fame Junior. And of course you saw some of our rehearsals back when we were working on that. And it was hard. It was a lot of work because we did it on Zoom and Google Classroom, but you can't sing together because of the lag. And by the end of the day, everybody was fried from, this is very taxing being on the computer all day. Kids are tired. But they did it. They came to rehearsals and they did it because that was also joy. That was the joyful part they were missing of having this little family and this community of being in the show. And, the music department put together all the music, even though the kids recorded it all separately. And then, Pat Smith, put it together with the other music people. And then Janie Alexander, who's our director, added these ridiculously amazing graphics. So at one point it looks like they're all dancing in the yearbook. And I mean, it was amazing, right? So it just goes to show, I think, for them that it's no, we can still do this. The whole point is we're creative people, right? So we have to be creative and we have to think outside the box. And the arts is always going to be relevant. And I think the good part, the silver lining of this crazy year has been that more people have had access, right? Because in a place like New Haven, where at least every kid got a device from school, and a lot more things were free, and you didn't have to travel, and you didn't have to, go to this place. You could watch from home with your family. I know for the Shubert, that's something that we want to keep. We want to keep making sure that we're knocking down those barriers and people have access if they can't get here, if they can't, afford the orchestra ticket, if whatever, that we can still bring more art to more people. And, we have a new executive director here, Anthony McDonald, who is very dedicated to, making sure that, diversity, we have more diverse options, we are welcoming more people in. And part of that is that access, making sure that there's an ability and a price point for everybody, right? So Broadway gets this reputation of being kind of a very rich kind of, white people kind of thing, right? You have to have money to go see a ticket on Broadway. We're going to, we have programs already in place and we'll build more so that everybody can fit in. Everybody has the access that they need so that it's available to everyone. You don't have to feel oh, that's not for me. That's not my space or that's not my whatever. It's everybody can enjoy everything if they want to.
So if
good goal and a good sort of force, I think, that hopefully is pervading the whole arts community right now.
I think that's true. Sometimes in New Haven, it feels like baby steps, but I think that's true. So I want to remind listeners that this is Arts Respond on WNHH Community Radio, 103.5 FM New Haven. I'm Lucy Gellman, and my guest today is Kelly Wizzardo of the Shubert Theater. She is the Director of Education and Engagement. And we are talking about the Shubert's summer, too many S's, Shubert's summer camp. Definitely need to have that second cup of coffee. But I wanted to ask, if parents are listening and they think, oh my goodness, this is something that my child should absolutely be a part of. What can you tease them with some of the programming, or is it top secret?
No, it's not top secret. I mean, and part of it is it involves with a group, right? So you always have a great plan in place, but sometimes you meet this group of, 12 kids and you're like, I'm going to tweak that a little bit because they're really interested in this thing. So again, it's open to a younger age this year. So if they're in second grade now, that makes them a rising third grader, right? So second grade now up to if they're in seventh grade now, they can apply for camp. And in the theater arts camp, we'll do our visual arts class and we'll do a theater class. And in the theater class, they may, the younger kids may do a prepared script that we already have. The older kids may write their own script. They might decide that they've got this great idea and they're going to write it themselves, which happens often in summer camp. One year it was, princesses versus superheroes, or something. It's like whatever the topic is that they have in mind, is going on. And we're also doing a movement class, which is kind of a deviation for us. So it's not a dance class. I want to say that only because I am not a dancer, right? So I the idea of choreography would be would scare me. So don't be afraid. It's not a dance class, although there may be dance elements in it. But it's more about a movement, like theatrical movement, like character movement. And, if you're in third grade, think, okay, we're all going to walk around the room and now we're going to walk like we're walking through peanut butter, and what does that mean? Or if you're working on a character in your play in theater, how does that character move? That character's 100 years old. How are they going to move versus if they're 6? How do those different people move in the world? So it'll give us a chance to be creative and to also get back into our bodies a little bit, because during this pandemic we did watch a lot of screen time. We had a lot of screen time, right? So the goal would be to have 0 screen time in theater camp and actually move and create the art ourselves. And sometimes that's with our paintbrush and sometimes that's with our bodies and our voices.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if you have seen the same. You mentioned earlier people who are now coming back who are in high school or college, and they're coming back as teachers or apprentice teachers. So are some of those folks coming back this year?
Yes. So Selena is going to be teaching theater class. She just graduated from Emerson College in Boston. So she will be teaching theater. Samaya graduated last year. She's not teaching camp. She's doing another program for me because of her work schedule. Let's see, Darius, who is one of our original campers, he is now graduating from high school. Will be helping to teach movement with a Yale grad student. And then Darius goes off to college in the fall. So, these are kids I've known since they were in 4th grade, so. Yeah. Is a privilege and a pleasure to be able to see them grow, over that many, as a teacher, often you see a kid for a year or 2 and then they move on, right? So with summer camp, it's great because they come back and I get to see the whole arc of where they've gone, and, it's amazing to see a kid like him who started and now is a great teacher. He does other things in his life and works well with kids and is a great mentor. And it's a beautiful thing. It's part of why we put teaching artists, high school teaching artists. We also work with Youth at Work, right? New Haven at Work program that places teens in programs to work. They get paid. So they're getting paid to work. They're helping the teacher, but they're also mentors for the kids because the experience they can share with campers about what it's like to be an artist themselves. And not every kid goes on to an art school. Maybe they did. And then they become a lawyer or a doctor or, a plumber. It doesn't matter. It's still going to be part of your life. It's life skills. The arts should always still be a joy in your life. So it's just great. It's great to see how they grow and how they use it in their life and how they grow in their art and a lot of self-confidence building in our camp. Yeah. And kindness. That's the other big theme to our camp is kindness. So, it's something that we kind of want them to all take back to their own homes and neighborhoods and lives. We always wind up doing some sort of kindness project during each session. And, a little kindness goes a long way and it's helpful to people. If you had a great time in camp and it made you feel better, take that home. And find somebody else in your life that you can help and give a little bit back to.
Yeah. I will say one thing that has always stuck with me in reporting on theater, the arts, but especially theater in New Haven across different grades, is how supportive students are of each other, and even how that has moved from like the stage to the chat function on Zoom or Google Meets, which is really interesting. Do you see that especially among return campers?
I do. I see it in the campers. I see it in the high school kids, whether it was our virtual camp or the kids I'm working with, especially like the freshmen or the younger kids that are new, and the older
Yeah.
have been so supportive and kind, and like, I'm here for you, if you need anything, just come find me. Like, now that the kids are back in school and they've known each other virtually, but they don't know each other. They didn't know each other.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't always know what each other looked like, right? And now I see them gathering like in the morning, talking in the hallways, and they're like, I've got your back, and I'll show you the ropes. And it's so sweet. And
Mm.
I've seen it all across the grades, even the little kids, when in virtual camp, it's scary sometimes to try something new, right? Or to step out of your comfort zone or be this character or whatever. And the kids are so supportive. Oh my God, that was so good, and wow, look at that thing you made. And oh, I'm so proud of you that you tried. I mean, and we're not coaxing them to give the support, like they're
Yeah.
to each other on their own. I mean, we're obviously supporting it, but it's been very sweet. And I've been very proud of all of them, that they are so supportive of each other. It's like they know what they need and they know what their peers need, and they're not afraid to give it to each other.
Yeah.
So that's, you can't help but love that when you see it, adults, when you see it all working, you're like, oh, so great.
Yeah. I mean, I've also seen among theater kids have always, I feel like, been the best. Like, they have that little magic spark, and maybe it's because no one else. I was a theater kid, and so it was like where all the bullied kids went at the end of the day, and then they were all friends with each other. But and I totally lost my train of thought.
Well, in theater camp, it's often, like I said, maybe they're the kind of the artsy kid in their school, and there's not a lot of other, like they're the kid that doesn't really like sports, when everybody's going to sports camp, do this thing. And when you come to this place and you find all of a sudden you're not weird, because there's all these other people just like you out there, and it's like, oh. And especially, middle school is such a time of very self-conscious. Yes. And, as a teenager, you're always thinking, oh my gosh, am I doing the right thing? And so to be in a safe, free space where you can still express yourself, and people are going to support you, and they're not, they're going to reward you for being brave and for trying things. That's a great experience for a kid when they find that place where they really belong. Wherever you belong. It's great for kids who are into sports and find sports camp and find their people. It's all good. It's just a matter of finding where your spot is. And when you find your spot, it's like a magical moment. And in the arts, we kind of tend to make a little family out of ourselves, right? When you work that hard in a process, when you work on a show, you become this little family with each other. So, a great relationship.
And was the thought, with middle school and then younger, was the thought always that these kids are at this really liminal stage? Because middle school is hard, man. It's hard. It's like, I can't.
There's a difference. You can see it happen. So it's like, and there's this line when they come in 7th and they don't want to kiss mom goodbye anymore. She drops them off. And you have to remind them to play. Like the little kids, when you do a play or whatever, they're like, yeah, and it's like, you're playing make-believe, right? And there comes this point in middle school where you like think like, oh, I'm not supposed to be a little kid anymore, and I'm not supposed to play make-believe. I'm supposed to, like, whatever it is you think grown-up-hoodness is, you're supposed to be older. And sometimes in camp, we have to remind them, no, I want you to play. Like, play around with this thing, like, have fun. That's what we do. And it's okay. And it's not silly and it's not stupid. And look, we do it for a living, like you can do this forever and it's great. So again, it's a good place for those tweens and teens to remember that it's okay to be a kid again.
And do you find that some of the students also lead the charge? And I mean, when I work with young people, I feel really good about the work. Like, most young people I know at this point are gender fluid. And I think that's a huge hurdle for older folks often. Most are much more open-minded. I get that we're in New Haven, and so it's a very blue place, and so it doesn't specifically reflect the rest of the country. But have you found that there is this push even when they're writing about zombies. And I will say zombies can be very important for social commentary. But have you found that there's this push to kind of usher in more open-minded work, more future-facing work?
With the older kids, yes. With the middle school kids, it's more about we have kids of different gender or who are in transition over the years that they've been in camp, and again, it's a place where they feel supported, and sometimes it's more of not a big deal. You know what I mean? Like, it's an accepted thing, and so it doesn't have to be a big topic because everybody's cool. So you don't have to work it out because I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not a point of contention, right? So
Yeah.
if you're doing Little Mermaid, it doesn't matter what color everybody is, or if this is a boy playing a girl, or vice versa, or if this character is male, like, it doesn't matter. It's all good. It works. Like, it's all about each kid being each kid.
Yeah. And I think in some ways that's the dream, right? The dream, like, I want to live in a world where Twitter doesn't get angry when Ariel is a Black trans woman. No, seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. So I want to let folks know how they can find out more information about the summer camp if they have littles at home, or middle school. Middle school kids probably don't like being called littles or kids. So I'm sorry to any young people who are listening who I've just offended. And also if you're capping it, or I should say what the caps are as far as cohort sizes.
Right. So the cohort sizes now are 15, which they always have been for us. Like, even pre-pandemic days, we always wanted small groups so that kids get lots of individual attention. So it's 15 with a teacher and a teaching assistant. So right now we're about half full already, but that means we've still got half our space left. And you can go to Shubert Camp, all one word, SHUBERTCAMP.com. And there's an FAQ. It explains the day and the times. Registration is right there online. If for any reason you can't register online, you can always reach out to me and I can take care of it for you. But everything's right there. All the answers are there, and you can always email me at shubertcamp@gmail.com. That's the easiest way to get me because I'm in between buildings and offices, so I'll get back to you. And yeah, we have a great time. We will have an open house, like, for people who have registered this year, but we're going to do that part virtually so that kids can meet their teachers and meet each other and get that whole lowdown again.
And I will say, for you as someone who's really you've been in the thick of this, and I know the Shubert has gone through a lot of transition in the past 15 and a half, 16 months as well. How are you using theater to stay sane, to practice self-care? Or maybe it's that you get home and you're like, I'm leaving theater at the doorway and I'm going to go take a bath with some Epsom salts.
Well, I mean, what I'm missing right now, except for Fame that we just did, is like, I don't have theater. Like, right now it's been a lot of business work, admin work. I mean, the whole virtual, everybody in the education field, like, I meet with other arts educators and it becomes a little bit of therapy for each other at the beginning of the meeting. But it's like, the world shut down, but the education people stayed on because kids still needed contact and engagement, but we had to reinvent how we did everything. So we had to, like, come up with this whole new world and this whole new method and this whole new everything. And now we're trying to get back into it and get people back in place. Like, honestly, it's exhausting. Like, I just need a nap at the end. But, finally getting to this point where I get to interact with kids and I get to see kids again and we're having camp, like, that is recharging. Like, that is the part I think most educators missed out on, because the working with kids is the joyous part of our life, right? So as a grown-up, we all have paperwork we have to do and bills to pay and spreadsheets we have to make and whatever. The good part is working with the kids and doing the art. And that's a bit of what we've been missing. So now it's exciting that we're getting back into that part, the human interaction and contact and live art, right? Because theater is usually something that it's a living thing, right? Yeah. What makes theater different from going to a museum and seeing a painting is that we're all experiencing it live together in one moment in time. And when we're all home watching Netflix, that's different because we're not interacting with each other. So now we want to get back to all that live performance where it's not just listening to the music or watching the play, it's hearing the laughter of the audience and hearing the, when somebody's excited about something, and that feeds the artist and it feeds the audience. And that's what we've been missing. So that's what we're excited to get back to. So I'm looking forward to whatever crazy zombie plays these kids make, or whatever post-pandemic middle school plays are about. It could be like a totally different topic this year than usual, and I'm excited to find out what that is too.
Yeah. Well, Kelly, I want to thank you. Is there anything about the camp that you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Just that you do not have to have any previous experience. It doesn't matter if your kid's been in 40 plays or if they've never been in a play. That is, everybody works together. Don't have any art skills. Maybe this is something they've always wanted to try, right? And also, we're very open and supportive. We have professional staff. If your child has any special education needs or, anything that, we want to make this experience great for every child.
Yep.
So just communicate that with us so that we're making sure that we make that child's day great. We want them to have a great experience and space in theater for everybody.
Yeah. Kelly Wizzardo, I want to thank you so much. I also would be remiss if just before we went, I did not shout out, because you mentioned them, some of the amazing educators who have gotten students through this year. There are too many arts educators for me to name, but since you brought up fame, I want to shout out Harriet Alfred and Pat Smith, who I have seen saving student lives every single day. And they're just amazing people. I want to shout you out, and also Anthony McDonald, who is the new executive director of the Shubert Theater and who I've had the great pleasure of meeting. I think that the Shubert has some really exciting things on the horizon, and I can't wait to see them.
And I can't wait for him to come and see what we do in camp.
Absolutely. Kelly, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
This is Babs Rawls-Ivy from New Haven, Connecticut, and you're listening to WNHHLP 103.5 FM, streaming live at New Haven Independent